Greetings to you. This is Ray Mofield speaking on the Oral History Project, for which WCBL Radio, under the aegis of Shelby McCallum, along with the Marshall County Library, the Kentucky State Archives, and the Murray State University Oral History Pogue Library Project. These tapes are being held with our senior citizens of the area and those who agree to talk with us about what life has been like for them and how the changes have affected Marshall County during their lifetime. Maybe stories that they heard their parents and grandparents tell. And our guest for the program at this time is Leonard Thompson, who lives here in Benton and has already told me he's 82 years old. Welcome to our microphone, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you.
We hope that we can live to be 82 and perhaps see some of the changes or similar changes to what you've seen in your lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Where were you born? Were you born in the county?
Yes, sir. Born out here close to Glade, near Walnut Grove Church House.
Yes, sir. I remember there was a little flag stop on the railroad at one time at Glade, wasn't
yes,
there?
Sir. That's where I got on the train when I went to marry.
All right. So you were born a good long while ago if you're 82 years old. Who were your parents?
Andrew Thompson, Andrew Alexander Thompson.
And your mother was?
She was a Dowdy.
A Dowdy.
Leland Dowdy.
You remember as far back as your grandparents on either side?
My grandparents on my daddy's side died when he was about 5 or 6 years old. And
so you didn't personally know them, of course.
No, he didn't hardly know him. He wasn't old enough.
What about on your mother's side?
On my mother's side, I recollect him as Jasper Dowdy.
Jasper Dowdy.
It was
Do you know about when the family came, either of those families came to this western part of Kentucky? It wasn't opened up till 1818, as you know.
No, I wouldn't. I never don't believe I ever heard anybody say just where they come from.
All right. You don't know whether they were English or Irish or Scottish. Usually our forebears are one of those three, perhaps Welsh, a few of them. Now, where did you go to school, Mr. Thompson?
Church Grove. That's my main school. Well, I come one winter here in Benton, 1913.
That was a one-room country school.
Yeah, Church Grove, one room school. And there was an old professor here in the county, the name of Brown, that taught spring schools, and I went to about 3 or 4 to him. And the last school I went to him was just arithmetic. He was a great mathematician, and he taught just arithmetic, Old Ray's Third Arithmetic.
That was a hard book, and in recent years they've talked about new math and the concepts that it brought out, and all that was in Ray's Arithmetic. Yeah. You people knew more about arithmetic than our college graduates do today in general.
Well, I might do it. I could solve every problem in it except the concrete problem. There was a concrete problem in there.
So that was the toughest.
What was the famous reader that was?
McGuffey's readers.
Yeah.
Did you use those?
4th, 5th readers, as I got.
Now, Ray, I would be recreant to a resolve I made at the start of this program if I did not bring this up. Where did you learn to play the fiddle, and was that part of your schoolwork, or was that an extracurricular?
No, that was just by listening to old timers.
I see.
You
see, Ray may not remember, but we had a program before we had a radio station in Marshall County for about 5 years that the Junior Chamber of Commerce sponsored, and Mr. Leonard was our star. Nearly every program with a number of excellent fiddle numbers, and he was very popular. Mm-hmm. And the program ran 2 hours once a week. From the
originating at the Benton Theater.
Originated at the Benton Theater.
From Mayfield.
I'm sure a lot of people listening will remember that.
Yes. Yeah. That's an excellent idea. And you had some musical ability, so much so that you just sort of taught yourself by listening to other people.
All my life I could hear a tune, just hear one, and then play it.
Well, Dr. Lowry at Murray State used to say brains are where you find them. Talent is where you find it, you know,
Yeah.
based on the old novel by Peter B. Kine of Gold is Where You Find It.
Mhm.
So that's good. Well, what was school life like? Was the discipline stricter than it is now? Did you get a whipping any time?
Not very often.
He was a obedient young. I got a whipping every day at a one-room school.
I never got a whooping in school.
Yeah. Well, being raised as an only child, my sister died before I was born, as a matter of fact. I was always told by my dad if he heard about my getting a whipping at school, he'd give me another one. So I never did tell him.
Yeah, my dad told me the same thing.
All right. What was there any recreation connected with school? I think I can recall that we had old pie suppers once in a while to raise a little money for the school library, and you'd bid on your favorite girl's pie, and you'd give 15 cents for it, maybe. As in
No,
the middle.
about the only kind of entertainment I think we had then was spelling matches.
Yes.
The other schools would visit, you know, we'd have called round spelling. One that went around the most times got one.
You'd
got the
turn
most
one down.
And
Now,
then they had freeze out on each side.
at the end, if you missed a word, you had to sit down.
Yeah,
That is freeze out.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I tried to stand up among the last ones.
Yeah, and you did.
I
So you were a good speller as well as a good mathematician. Well, that's fine.
I believe, based on some of my experiences, that they may have dropped that subject in the schools today. I don't know.
Well, if you would read the output of the PhDs who send me letters from time to time, you would swear that they'd never had a spelling course, many of them. Yeah. Apparently, their secretaries don't catch it either, you see. So, your favorite subject, you've already told us, was math. Well, what were some of the games they played at school? when you
baseball. Baseball
Uh-huh.
was about the only games we played in school.
You had, I suppose, other childhood games like Blind Man's Buff and Tag and Red Rover, Hopscotch,
Yeah.
and
And we had a game that I see a lot on television now. It makes me think of it. We called Old Sal.
yeah.
We had a hole in the ground and a bunch of holes around it, and it had a driver to drive that tin can up into that hole, and you could get one of the other places. And that was one of the main games.
Well, I don't believe I'd heard of that before. That's quite interesting to me. Yeah. All right, as a young man, after finishing school, did you, begin work on the farm? Or?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I worked on a farm and all through the Depression. And I believe it's about 1940, I began working at Utorum Grocery Company up here in town, when the first Utorum stores, me and James Henson.
Lowell
Great.
King came
Yeah,
out
Lowell.
of West
McKenzie, Tennessee.
McKenzie, Tennessee, and started it.
He was our boss.
When Ray mentioned the Depression, I recall a few visits to Memphis and the long lines of desolate people. The Depression wasn't quite that traumatic here, was it? I mean, in a country like this, there was plenty to eat, I suppose.
Yeah.
It wasn't
You
like
just didn't have much
Oh.
money,
No, didn't have no money, didn't have.
but you
wasn't
produced
nothing to buy
nearly.
much.
My mother's grocery bill used to be, say, 25 cents a week. It's
Oh,
just
yeah.
soda, salt, baking powder, sugar.
Most everybody had chickens, and
You had a cow,
yeah, had a cow.
so you had plenty of milk and
And
butter.
I operated a cream station up here in town. And there was a
You
lot of
have run a
people.
Babcock tester then, haven't you? Where you put it
Yeah.
in and cranked it,
Yeah,
and by centrifugal force threw the cream to the top, and then put some calipers up there and measured it.
white gas.
Yeah.
No, let's see. Yeah, it was white. That's
Uh-huh.
right. Yeah.
Well, I hadn't thought of cream testing in a while, but I've sold a lot of 29 cents worth of cream every Saturday and Wednesday.
Yeah, a certain percent of your cream was, you had to test it to run around, see what percent is butterfat. You got paid for by the butterfat.
5 or 6, or maybe the finest jerseys sometimes would run up to around
40 was extra high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what did you make as a salary this first week you worked at Totem? Do you remember that?
Yes, sir, I sure do. $15.
$15. That was a lot of that was a lot of money.
Then I went to work for Mr. Headley Heath, $18 a week. And off and on I worked at Ferguson's too, you know, Mr. Bill Kuykendall.
Yes,
I read there, you knew them.
Yes, sir. Yes,
And
sir.
then I got a job working for Dewey Jackson in the grocery store. And
I
I
remember
worked for him
him.
about
too.
2 months in '44. And 21st day of August, I began driving the truck for Naaman Dukes, gas truck.
Let me ask another question, just the reverse of that. When you were farming, do you remember your cash crop? Did you grow tobacco?
Yeah, go to back.
What was the least crop you ever grew?
I had a crop one time that weighed 1,525 pounds, and that was in long about 33,
3.
I guess. Carried it to Murray, and I got a check for $3.75. The backer had damaged a little equipment.
Well, you telling the bigger story. I've always thought I could tell the worst story. My dad was a sharecropper, and in '33, that same year you're talking about, we rented an old farm from Arthur Blaylock, agreed to give him a third of what the tobacco brought, and after we sold the tobacco in Murray on the outland floor, it brought $21. So we sent him a check. Well, not a check. We didn't have a checking account. Bought him a money order for $7, and we had 14. And I tell the kids now that we lived a year on $14, and their eyes get pretty big. But yours was $3.
$3.75.
And you owned your own farm.
No, I was renting. That's Tom Jones was my landlord, and he wouldn't take a third of it.
He wouldn't.
No, he didn't take a third of it. He gave me the whole $3.75.
I heard a story once. I guess it was just a story, but they said that the tobacco brought so little it didn't pay the floor expense, and he had to take the floor man a chicken.
No, and in 22, 23 and 24, I lived out here by Church Grove then, and we put a tobacco in the association. I never did get another penny. The expenses eat up the rest of it.
You know, I interviewed a lady once by the name of Minnie Thompson. Of course, I've forgotten what she was before she married, but she was 101 then. Was her husband related to you? Do you?
No, that was a different set of Thompsons. I knew them. She was a Darnell before she married.
Yes, sir.
I knew them, but they wasn't any kin. Or there might have been a distant.
Well, after you had grown up, as you said you farmed, were you involved in any of the wars as a soldier?
No, I registered. I had to register when I was 18. But if they had made one more call, I'd been into it. And I was a substitute mail carrier then, and I had a neighbor boy that got killed the day before our mistress was signed. And I carried that telegram to his dad.
Well, my father was registered but did not attend, go into World War I, so you were a similar situation. What are some of the funniest things you can remember about your real early life in school, or perhaps you said you were married. To whom did you marry?
I married a McGregor. Ida McGregor, George McGregor's girl.
And you had some children?
Yes, sir. We've had 8 children, and 4 of them still living.
You must have had some sad experiences and some
Yes, sir.
happy ones.
Yes,
so
sure
could you tell us some of the more amusing things, maybe?
Well, I don't know. I guess about the best things, musingest things I ever done was when I played ball. baseball. That was my best game.
Uh-huh.
And music, too.
Well, a lot of people during the Great Depression, Mr. Thompson, decided that they could find greener pastures in Detroit or Chicago or someplace. Did you ever go off and look for work somewhere
Yes,
else?
sir. In 1928, I spent about 2 months in Detroit. And then in 1929, I went back up there and stayed all that summer. I bought a team of mules, and I had to go up there and make enough money to pay for them.
We didn't farm with tractors back then.
No, no, that was horse and buggy days.
And
You
had-
would say, though, that a person can weather a depression more comfortably, if you have to have one, in a rural area than you would in a big city.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I think so.
Well, other things about life. Did you ever go to preaching?
Oh yes, yes, yes.
Do you remember any of the preachers of that day?
Yes. As far back as I can recollect, my dad and mother, we went to Church of Glade, Church of Christ preacher. Harvey Jones was a preacher.
Harvey Jones, I believe I've
And
heard
then,
that.
of course, I was raised right here, right at Church Grove Church House.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe
There's a Methodist church there and a
Yeah.
school both. weren't
Yeah.
That
The school was
frequent.
up on top of the hill. Then they finally moved it. My last year was down at the foot of the hill. And the spurbackers, I can recollect a man by the name of Pearson, I believe was a preacher there. Old feller, down at Church Grove. And
Well-
Mr. Ed Bird was a singing school teacher, and he taught us singing school line. He learnt me the notes. And I was just a boy.
What were the roads like when you were a young man?
Oh,
Were
they was awful rough.
Yeah.
In I began driving in 1944, and Marshall County didn't have any roads then, hardly.
Mhm.
And the first gravel road that was made was wagon and team. They'd have take a bunch of 2x4s and lay down on this running gear, and then a plank on each side for the sideboard, and they'd dump that. That's the way they made the first gravel road.
Did you ever have to work on the road? I've heard my dad say that he used to. The magistrate had the power to force the farmers in the neighborhood to put in 2 or 3 days a year, maybe.
At one time, along in the Depression, they had what's called a bean gang, and we had a program on our road there that Tom Jones and Slaughter Road, they called it. That's where I lived then.
Mm-hmm. What did they mean by bean gang? Did you get some beans for doing it? or-
You'd get, sometimes they'd get vegetables give to you, work out, maybe tools to work with. I got seed potatoes. I recollect one time I got a bunch of seed potatoes.
Fellows would put in their days, and that sort of was, I guess, in lieu of more taxes
Yeah.
being paid at that time. Do you remember, I believe they built the highway from Benton to Murray and on to Hazel in 1929.
Yeah.
Did you work on that road any?
No. The 1928 and 9, I was in Detroit.
Uh-huh.
Most of 29, that 28, I was just there in the fall.
Well, tell us what Benton was like back in your early days.
Well,
You told some of the stores where you worked already, but
yes.
were the streets paved? When did they pave streets in Benton?
Oh no, they were just gravel.
Gravel?
Just gravel streets and everybody had outdoor toilets,
Mm-hmm.
and all along there at the back of the drugstore, and along there where the old Bank of Benton was, that was just a row of cold houses. Rats were just as thick as they could stick. Now then, there's a lot of difference in the town now than back when I was a boy.
Typical country town, I suppose, all over the southern states would have been similar to that in those days. I think someone told me, this may be incorrect, that they didn't build a water system till 29, and there was no sewage for many years after that.
No, and when I moved to Benton, we didn't have any water. 44. I recollect I had water put in my house. I rented.
There was already water in Benton in 44, but it wasn't in your home.
No.
Yeah.
Most of the first fire truck that was here, they had to get water out of people's cisterns. Sometimes they draw a cistern dry trying to put out a building.
Well, do you remember anything about other towns in the county? Hardin, you were in that direction.
Yeah,
Was it a fairly good business place back then?
Yes, it was. Of course, it's changed now a whole lot to what it was. The main part of Hardin is here right on the highway now, you might say, but it used to be up in town. My wife had a sister that lived there, and we went up there right small. And the used to be a bank there, and 3 or 4 doctors. I recollect all of them.
Yes, sir. And there was one time a newspaper printed in Hardin. Leona Starks, I'm told, edited a newspaper
I
there.
believe so. Of course, I didn't take it, but I believe I recollect hearing talk about it.
And it had a movie house and a dime store and a drug store.
Depot.
Yeah. I remember the depot pretty well. In fact, when I went to the Navy in World War II, I got on a train at Hardin. Left home
It was.
on the great old NC in St. L. Well, you were renting a farm. Did you ever own one?
No, I never did own a farm.
Well, when you came to Benton, did you buy a house?
Came to Benton, I rented a few years, and then I bought the place where I'm at now.
Would you mind telling us what it cost then to buy a
Yes,
house?
it cost me, I think, $3,000.
$3,000. That today, that same house would be $30,000, I suppose.
Well, he'd be a whip towards it.
Yeah.
I was gonna tell you.
So prices have changed a great deal.
You bet.
Do you remember? Have you ever ridden in an airplane?
No, sir. No. Never.
But you did ride the train out of Hardin quite a bit.
Went to Paris on the train. Went to Purdue a few times on the train.
Was there very much around Glade in the way of? Was there a general store there? Or?
Yeah. There was one of the main stores in the county was there. And Hauser, fellow by the name of Hauser, Jimmy Hauser run the store. My great uncle, S.J. Rudd, run the store. That was about 3 of the main stores in the county that I knew of. Of course, down in the north end of the county, I never did go down there. Back when I was a boy, I didn't have no way. But there was a store, and there was a blacksmith shop there, and the church was there at Glade. And, I guess 3 or 4 houses, dwelling houses.
Was there any difference in, let's say, funeral customs back then? I think I've heard my dad say that everybody just gather in and dig the grave.
Yes, sir. I've digged lots of them. They dug everybody's grave. When there's a burying at our cemetery there, our old home place out here by Church Grove, where my daddy owned, we dig the graves. And one time me and neighbor Boyd started hunting. And we got about halfway up the graveyard. My dad, I think that was the year that everybody had the flu. And my dad hollered and told us we had to dig a grave. And we had to dig that grave by ourselves, me and that boy. We didn't get to hunt.
So many other people were sick.
Yeah.
And of course, young boy that you were, you'd rather been hunting, no doubt.
Oh, yeah.
And I believe, did you sit up at the homes till?
Yeah. You, I tell you, the old saying was, you sit up with the dead person to keep the cats off of them. If you're dead set.
That was a general.
Yeah, you had to sit up with them at their home when they died. People would meet. Women would, if it's a woman, women would meet and make their dress.
Do you remember any county officials much along over the years?
Yeah.
Sheriff? Who was sheriff when you were a young man?
Pete Egner was sheriff way back. And Lewis Wallace.
Lewis Wallace.
Was oldest, and I guess.
Remember any of the county judges, maybe, or?
Yeah, Mr. John Lovett was judge one time, and
did you have a family doctor?
oh yeah, Dr. Howard was when I was just a kid, a boy. He was our family doctor. Then along come Dr. Washburn and Dr. Travis. Some of us got sick. I don't recollect now who it was, but anyhow, that was on T-model days.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Washburn had a T-model car. And I walked halfway to Benton. It flagged him down to get to ride back home in it.
That is a thrill just to ride in the car.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
And of course, the way you described the roads, I guess it was a good idea that Henry Ford had to make those wheels 30 inches tall.
Yeah, they was, I'd say 19-inch wheels anyhow. 18, 19. First car I ever had 18-inch wheels. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them had.
Well, the 19-inch came out with the 30 Model A Ford.
Yeah.
The first Model A was 21-inch and 28.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the last Model T was 23 inches, but some of those were 30 inches tall, way back in the teens. The last one of those around here that I could remember was Bob Treese Long's 1915 Model T.
Yeah.
Which
Mr. Van Treese had the oldest, and that was he was kin to Mr. Van's wife, and Mr. Rollcrease's wife was sisters. And
when did you first get a radio? Do you remember anything about that?
No, I don't recollect when I got my first radio.
Or just listening to
A
them?
long time ago, the first radio I ever listened to was my dad-in-law's. It was operated with a battery.
Mm-hmm.
You had earphones, didn't you? You had to put
Did
earphones.
it have earphones or a speaker?
No,
Did
it just had a speaker.
Had a speaker.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my grandmother way back yonder in Jackson, Tennessee. She had one you had to put on earphones to hear.
Yes.
I believe when radios first come around, there's a man come to our schoolhouse one time, and I believe he had some of them on.
Yeah.
Listen, trying to catch things.
Yeah.
That's before they got.
People would be thrilled to death if they got New York or Philadelphia or Chicago.
Lord, yes.
Didn't matter what they said.
No.
So they heard something in the air.
Yeah.
You remember any of your favorite programs from the early days? Lemon Avenue.
Grand Ole Opry.
Grand Ole Opry, yeah.
I can recollect when it kind of first started.
1925.
Yes,
sir.
And by the name was George D. Hay and David Stone.
Yes, sir. Those, the announcer and the MC, the solemn old judge.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Well, Mr. Thompson, it's been an enjoyable half hour. Do you have anything special in the last minute and a half or so that you'd like to say, something you'd like to put on the tape we haven't covered?
Well, I can't think of anything now, only I'll say one thing, that I'm glad to be living in Benton.
And
You've
glad
almost
to-
answered my question. I was going to ask you, if you had your life to live over again, are there many changes you would make, and would you prefer to live right here?
Yes, I believe I'd prefer to live here.
Well, that's fine.
Yes, sure would.
That's quite a testimony to Marshall County, and I believe Mr. Thompson feels about it the same way as I do and many others. Shelby McCallum has been sitting in with us in the studios of WCBL, sponsor of this series. Our person who has just been interviewed today is Mr. Leonard Thompson, who is 82 and living here in Benton and has spent most of his life in Marshall County. I'm Ray Mofield, and the series is being produced in the interest of the Oral History Project of the Commonwealth of Kentucky State Archives in Frankfort, the Marshall County Library, and the Murray State University Pogue Oral Library Collection.